Hey, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Concealed Carry Podcast. I am your host, Riley Bowman, and we are getting started actually precisely 1 hour late. We can blame it on Matthew.
Definitely this time was me.
What's up, dude?
Nothing, man. Nothing. Just dealing with the snow we got last night. We first got our first snow, so
We've had 4 snowstorms in
crazy.
Colorado already.
Uh,
So you're still a snowstorm virgin.
yeah, I'm not looking forward to the snow at all.
Yeah, I saw some pics from Rob Beckman showing some snow in the Cincinnati area. So
Right?
yeah, it makes sense that you would have gotten some in Columbus.
For sure.
Yeah. Hey, got just a handful of folks joining here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So again, apologize. We're getting started a little bit late. Here we are. We're going to talk about this is a legislative news episode here today. So it'll be a good time. Wow, I actually got an email from YouTube saying that concealedcarry.com is live right now. I don't think I've ever gotten an email like that before. That's
Yeah,
weird.
that's weird.
Yeah. Okay, cool. It's weird to get an email telling myself that I am in fact live. Hello, people. No comments yet? Or am I just not, is something not working right?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
I'm just trying to make sure everything's working before we get too far along here. Nope, not that. Don't want that.
There we. I just got a
Well,
comment.
that's awkward. Mitch has scheduled a video to premiere in 13 minutes. At the same time, we're going to be live. Probably ought to reschedule that. Hold on a sec. I need to deal with that. Hey, Mitch. My apologies. It's hard for me to type and not say what I'm typing. Not occupy. Entertain the masses, Matthew.
Okay, so since you guys are all dying to know, I just got back from my 2-week surgery report, and they told me all about my tear in my labrum, and I was bummed out because I thought initially at this point I would be able to drive my car. I'm not taking any narcotics. I'm decent. I'm going to physical therapy. I can move my shoulder and everything, and then they tell me today I can't drive for another 4 weeks. So I'm like, man, this is not good. Not good at all. So
I'm sorry, bro. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? Got to look at the best thing about it. I'm healing. God put me in a good position to get healed and good doctors and stuff. So, we'll be doing it up, but it does kind of put a cramp on on getting my daughter to school and stuff. So we'll deal with it.
Yep. So this was weird. We definitely had some kind of weird lag on the live stream here because on Facebook, because I just got the notification like a minute ago. They were live on Facebook. Weird.
Yeah, really.
So, but we are in fact live. Here we are. Again, some of you probably heard a little bit earlier, but some of you probably did not. But we are about an hour late getting started today. I apologize. Matthew, of course, was just explaining a little bit about that, some of the stuff he's going through. And yeah, it sucks. You can't drive for 4 weeks. My goodness.
And my wife is not the greatest driver, so I'm not a good passenger.
I just spewed water everywhere.
I'm sorry. I have to say, I'm an honest guy, man. I'm not a good passenger in the car.
I have water all over my laptop.
You said entertain. We're entertaining here.
Oh man, I was taking a sip right as you said that my wife's not the greatest driver. I'm like, you realize you're alive, right? You're admitting this to the whole world.
Yeah. She knows.
Krista, I'm sorry if you're watching this.
She knows. She knows.
Oh man, water all over my keyboard. Oh
Oh, nobody
man,
share this with her.
there's water in the microphone. Oh, you just caught me off guard there with that comment. Wow. Wow, geez, I really spewed. There's water all the way over there.
Good thing it didn't come through your nose.
It almost did. Oh, that was funny, man.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. All right. Back to the regularly scheduled programming. So today is a legislative news episode. Thanks for the laugh, brother.
No problem.
Tony's like, what did I miss? You missed out on a good time. You'll have to go back and rewatch, brother. Mug, courtesy of Law of Self-Defense, lawofselfdefense.com, of course. Thank you. Finished my sip of water there without spewing it everywhere.
Nice.
All right, I've calmed down. So, let's get into it, folks. Thanks for being with us here today. We will announce the winner of this week's raffle or prize giveaway from the podcast towards the end of the episode. That will be announced in the live recording of the episode, so stay tuned so you can learn if you won the drawing. And if you're not familiar with the weekly prize giveaway we do with the Concealed Carry podcast, make sure you're signing up each week at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. And we'll make sure we do live. I don't think we did it last week. I think I completely spaced it. The live episode on Thursday of last week. We're supposed to announce a winner or something, and I think I spaced it or something. At least that seems to be what I recall. So I apologize. But anyway, so today we'll be talking about legislative news, and we have our state-by-state speed reload. We'll cover some state issues as well, and so looking forward to it. All right, Matthew, here we go. Let's go live with the recording portion here. So here we go. In 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, episode number 367. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I am your host, Riley Bowman, and I'm joined today by Master. Oh, man. Master Matthew Marister.
Yes, sir. That's me.
I don't know if that was supposed to be like a Mr. Matthew Marister, a Mr. Marister, a Matthew.
It's a Freudian slip. You just,
Oh, shoot. So a moment ago, before we started recording this episode, Matthew made a comment live on Facebook, I might add, about his wife that had me spewing my water out of my Law of Self-Defense mug all over my laptop, all over the table. I have water stuck in the foamy that covers my microphone here.
Oh, man.
So welcome to the podcast. That's a crazy way to start off today. Today's episode is a legislative news update episode. We've got some news stories to cover from on a federal basis as well as from across the country from various states. We'll do our state-by-state speed reload, or state roundup as sometimes Matthew calls it. Looking forward to that. And we got some stuff that's going to, we'll talk about here that personally may affect myself and Jacob and even those, most of our employees actually work in this business since most of us are based in Colorado. So we got some news out of Colorado. And this one is, well, I'll get into that. We got some stuff out of Florida, Louisiana, Montana, Oregon, Virginia, and Wyoming. There probably could be more, but that's what we're going to cover today. Plus, a news story about how the U.S. Supreme Court did not take up the case regarding Remington and the lawsuit from a number of the victims and victims' families from Sandy Hook. and what that could potentially mean. And I think that the implications of that could be very large indeed. In fact, I'm kind of freaked out about that one. That'll be our first story we get to. So stay tuned for all of that. Plus, we'll be announcing our winner of our weekly podcast prize giveaway, which is, of course, if you're not familiar, you got to go to concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. Make sure you sign up on a weekly basis. That's a rotating door. It's like one of those revolving, spinning doorways, whatever. What do you call that? Revolving doorway? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, you walk in and it just keeps moving around and around and around, and you can stay on that ride and walk right out if you want. But we want to make sure that you sign up for the giveaway each week. So head on over to concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. Today's prize winner will be receiving a TacWare TW350 flashlight. I think they're really cool flashlights and valued at like $50. So that's pretty cool. Somebody will be winning one of those today. And our next giveaway, what is our next giveaway? I forgot already. It's a 1 month free of Laser X. Am I wrong?
You are right.
Okay, cool. So 1 month free to Laser X, which is a really great dry fire training software. So yeah, make sure you sign up for the giveaway. Today's episode is made possible and brought to you by Laser X and the team at laserapp.com. That's where you can learn about the laser, or LASR, laser activated shot reporter or shot reporting. Anyway, something like that. Laser activated shot reporter software. Laserapp.com. We've been friends with these guys for years. We've been promoting their products for years. I'm a big believer. I use them, and I love them. And the newest release, Laser X, is compatible with virtually any device that's internet connected through its browser. Works really, really awesome. In fact, we just did that with the Shooter Ready Challenge. I just filmed the second challenge of our Shooter Ready Challenge. It's a monthly challenge. If you're not familiar, head on over to shooterreadychallenge.com and you'll see me using and demonstrating with the Laser X software. I think this month's challenge was reloads, combat reloads specifically. So really cool software. We love them. Head on over to laserapp.com. Our giveaway for this next coming week, so it'll be announced on next week's Tuesday episode, is for a month free of Laser X. Lifetime licenses are also available, in case folks don't know that. You don't have to pay monthly forever and ever if you don't want to, but it is an option to pay monthly or only pay for when you use it. Today's other episode sponsor is Guardian Nation, guardiannation.com. Head on over there and learn about Guardian Nation. We would love to see you in the nation and to be a part of a really cool community of like-minded folks. One of my favorite things about it, as far as membership benefits, is our members-only Facebook page. Lots of great commentary and conversation and topics of discussion and things going on over there in the Facebook members-only group, Guardian Nation members group. So join Guardian Nation, join the group, and take advantage of all the other, because that's just like one little benefit, but it's a cool benefit. But there's tons of other great benefits of Guardian Nation. Again, guardiannation.com. Yeah, check it out. All right, Matthew, let's jump into it.
Let's roll.
So our first story is U.S. Supreme Court declines to shield gun maker from Sandy Hook lawsuit. So we knew this was coming. We knew that they were looking at possibly taking up this case. And basically what it came down to is, the Supreme Court, a lot of times what happens is there's basically like three ways that cases that come before the Supreme Court can go. One is they take the case, they hear the case, and they decide on the case. Number two is they may take a case, and by decide, they may like actually make a ruling that's a Supreme Court ruling, right? Like, well, we think this. That's what I mean by that, decision on that case. Number two, they may hear a case and actually decide, no, you know what, we're going to send that back down to the lower case or to the lower court, and they need to do some things differently with regards to that case. Number three, they may simply not hear a case and say, nope, not interested. We're not taking it up. And that's what they did in this case. So this was a lawsuit filed against Remington Arms Company. And Remington Arms, owned by a conglomerate that also owns Bushmaster, and that's really, that was a big piece of it here, because the Bushmaster rifle is what was used by the shooter at Sandy Hook. And they're basically, so you have victims and victims' families. And by the way, my heart goes out to them. Okay, I we've talked about that before. And Sandy Hook affected me tremendously, because when Sandy Hook occurred, I got 5 kids. At the time, I didn't have 5 kids, but I have 5 kids now. But my oldest child, my oldest son, was just starting kindergarten, I think, or first grade. He was right around that time. He may have been in his kindergarten year or first grade year. I'd have to think about it, but it was very early on. So it's kind of that pivotal moment in my life, Matthew, and I know that you're familiar with this, where you're like, wow, like I have a child in school,
Yeah.
And then you hear about this horrific shooting where these were kids that were basically the age of my son. So it was a terrible, terrible thing that happened and shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. The question, though, is, should Remington/Bushmaster be held liable for that? Now, one thing that's at issue here is they're pointing at some of the marketing or advertising that was used, and specifically, there's actually an image of, it's not this article, it's in the related article, which you'll also see in today's show notes, that is titled, "What is the Future of Firearms Advertising?" And the author of this article shows a screenshot of an ad that is one of the ads at question. And this is a Bushmaster ad saying, "Consider your man card reissued," and it's showing this AR-15, right? And then if you look and there's finer print there, it says, "If it's good enough for the professional, it's good enough for you. Bushmaster, the world's finest commercial AR platform rifle." So something about this tells them that, well, they're targeting people with aggressive marketing, looking for, I guess, aggressive people. But the funny thing about the Sandy Hook shooting is that the rifle was owned and purchased by the shooter's mother, right? And he shouldn't have really had access, especially since she knew that he had some mental issues, but he somehow did have access, and he grabbed that rifle, shot his mom to death, and then went over to the school and shot up the school, right? So the whole premise of this lawsuit about the advertising and the marketing surrounding the Bushmaster AR-15, actually has nothing to do with the actual shooter that used the gun, because he just grabbed a gun that his mom bought, and she probably wasn't. I'm guessing she wasn't interested in a tagline like "Consider your man card reissued," because it was a female. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but anyway, that's the issue at hand here. That's the case. Initially, it was shut down, but then I think the state Supreme Court in Connecticut picked it back up. I don't remember all the details. We've talked about it in the last couple of years in the podcast here and there as things have come up, and thought it was shut down. And I'll be honest, I thought the U.S. Supreme Court was, I thought we'd see something different than, we're not going to hear this case.
Yeah.
Because what that basically means is, as of right now, a lot of other gun manufacturers are at risk of being sued as well. Now, there is a law, the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, that protects these guys. I mean, it doesn't mean that a lawsuit, if it proceeds, is actually going to win, but it should be something where the courts can shut it down and say, no, these manufacturers are protected under the law.
Right.
Right? And there's a reason for that law to exist. A very important one, because it is possible that with allowing manufacturers to be sued because of horrendous acts committed by people that in some cases illegally possess or purchase these guns, why should they be liable for that? I don't know. Well, okay, I do know. They shouldn't be.
Right.
Right? But this potentially puts a lot of other manufacturers at risk of lawsuits, similar lawsuits. And so maybe this was something that the Supreme Court said we're not going to take something up like this right now, but maybe they might be interested in taking it up later. But why should manufacturers have to defend themselves against frivolous lawsuits like this?
Yeah, and that's the scary thing, right? Like, you assume that these gun manufacturers are these huge conglomerate companies like Google and all this that have millions and millions of dollars, but the truth of the matter is they're not like super high, top 10 Forbes companies, right? So these types of lawsuits, I mean, imagine if this was allowed and every single person's family that was affected, either injured or killed in the Las Vegas shooting, how many lawsuits? I mean, it'd be a class action, I'm sure, but like, you know what I mean? They would be constantly in court defending and spending money on lawyers and just to defend against something that I don't think that anybody realistically can draw a coordinated or a straight line from this advertisement directly led to this. It's more of just, hey, we don't like the gun industry. We are going to try to cripple a company or companies, and this is how we're going to do it. And I think that's the problem with it. If it was a legitimate, they brought up a case and said, hey, this is 100%. We can show that this led to this. Then present that case, but not just this. Well, you made the gun and you had an advertisement that sure. I've seen some Bushmaster ads that I'm like, okay, you're trying to make it seem like these guys are civilian. AR-15s are being used in combat, like it's comparable gun and all this stuff. I get it, but that's advertising. I mean, if I don't know. I just think it's frivolous, like you said, and I think it's really damaging. So hopefully, this isn't this doesn't become just a way to control gun owners and by destroying the gun companies.
Yep. Yeah, man. Now, there is a pretty interesting, as I mentioned, it was a related article that is posted along with this U.S. Supreme Court story. Written by AMOLAND editor Duncan Johnson. What is the future of firearms advertising? He talks about, as someone with a marketing background, about some. Actually, hold on. Actually, so it's posted. Excuse me. It's not written by the editor. He's the one that posted it, but it's actually written by Josh Claflin, who's a president at a basically a consulting company, a marketing company, and he talks about some ways that businesses can protect themselves a little bit better from being maybe at risk of these types of lawsuits. So interesting read there. I mean, I'm not going to go into great detail on it, but you might just be interested in reading that article, particularly if you own a business or are in the industry with anything firearms or even firearm training or shooting training related. Probably some good things at least to be aware of or to consider. So interesting article there.
For sure.
All right. Next article is from Politico.com, written by Richard Feldman, who is an attorney and government affairs expert. And the title of the article is this: I was an NRA lobbyist. I'm not sure that's really saying much, but anyway, I was an NRA lobbyist. Here's my roadmap for gun reform. Matthew, I'm going to let you take the lead on this, but I'm just going to start out by saying this dude is an absolute FUD. Okay, I'm done. Now
All right,
take it away.
I'll take the baton. So just a little backstory. He starts off the article by saying, he was involved in lobbying, lawmakers for favorable laws and things like that. And he thinks back to like in the 90s when Democrats actually, were maybe not the 90s, maybe as earlier around I'd say like 80s, mid 80s, where Democrats in Congress were actually pro-guns. Many of them, not all of them, but they were traditionally more of like, hey, we want to conserve, individuals' rights and things like that. It was part of the Democratic platform. Well, obviously, it shifted drastically since then. And so he kind of comes up with a couple of different pillars of his reform plan. The first one is stop saying universal background checks. He believes, or he states his, I don't know, he doesn't put any facts, it's just an opinion. He kind of asserts it that most gun owners are okay with universal background checks, which I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's not. But I'm sure there's a good number of gun owners that support universal background checks, meaning, no matter what, when you transfer that firearm, it has to go through an FFL. I think it's the wording of the question, and maybe that people don't really know what universal background checks are, and if they're framed in a way that makes it seem like they're going to stop gun violence, there's like, okay, yeah, I'm good for it. So this was stop saying universal background checks, and this is somehow going to, sway gun owners to fall in line with these types of things. He proposes, I believe, that if you do follow these, sell a gun through an FFL, then that individual seller would have some sort of protection from lawsuit if that gun were to be used in a crime and things like that, which these states are starting to, those laws and states are starting to pop up. So
we're going to talk about that from the state of Oregon. There's a story coming up here in a bit during our state speed reload segment. By the way, we have another story from Louisiana, which actually is written by A.W.R. Hawkins, and I'm a big fan of him. He does a great job, writes for Breitbart. And in his article, by the way, this is the kind of a bit of an irony between the stories that we're covering in today's episode, because we have this one right now that you're talking about on Politico, talking about how, well, my first, item in my gun reform plan is universal background checks, because dang near everybody supports them, and so yeah, we just need to make them happen. But we need to remove the term universal background checks because it makes people a little bit uneasy. They don't like hearing universal. And but basically what he's saying is, yeah, but we want universal background checks with some exclusions or exceptions. But then if you go to, we're going to get to this, okay, a little bit later, the Louisiana story about how the Louisiana governor wants more control on gun shows. Well, AWR Hawkins at Breitbart.com points out how background checks are a bunch of baloney. Pretty much, because especially if your aim is we need to reduce gun violence, related violent crime, and so our aim is to do that through, and one of the mechanisms is universal background checks. He then highlights, I don't know, probably 30 some odd incidents where of these mass shootings, and every single one of them, the shooter obtained the gun legally, passing a background check from a dealer.
Right. Or would have, even if it wasn't, or would have passed it because there's no prior, history of violence or anything like that. So,
well, that's exactly the point. Like, your background checks. Here's the thing. Again, I'm like you. I don't buy the statistics that I hear on every mainstream news outlet that say 80 or 90% of gun owners are even in support of universal background checks. You know what, folks? Maybe we should do our own poll, our own concealedcarry.com poll, and just ask people, ask our audience, are you in favor of universal background checks? Because I'm willing to bet that it's not 80% of you.
I don't think so.
By the way, I want, if there's anyone listening to this episode today and you are for universal background checks, but yet you're a fan of the podcast, don't take what we're talking about here as any derision towards you. And in fact, I'd love for you to message us, podcast@concealedcarry.com, because I'd like to hear your side of the story or your side of the issue as to why you're for increased background checks, but yet you're a pro-gun individual, okay? Because here's what I'm going to say, all right? Because if you are for universal background checks, maybe you have different reasons than this, but I'll just tell you this much. They will not do what proponents say they will do. They will not stop mass shootings. They will not stop criminals from getting their hands on guns. This guy, Feldman, tries to make a case that, he talks about how, it's the next point. Sorry, Matthew, I hijacked what you were doing
No,
here.
no,
His next point, and this is kind of similar in a way, but he says number 2, help stop illegal gun sales. He says rampant trafficking of stolen weapons is another area that of things that we may have common ground with the other side on and be able to tackle this issue. And he talks about how thieves break into homes, steal guns, then sell their stuff to fences. What's a fence, Matthew?
kind of like an intermediary dude that, you see some parolee coming in to sell some product, you're going to be kind of leery. So you kind of sell it to a third party or an intermediary guy.
Yep. So you sell them to a fence, sell these stolen guns to a fence who's, an intermediary that can then maybe go and sell it to a pawn shop or to a dealer and not really have a lot of questions asked about it because, anyway. So, all right. So fences take those, and then he says fences take those stolen guns over state lines, sell them back to dealers who have no simple means of knowing that they are in fact purchasing stolen merchandise. When a retailer buys a firearm, he must record it in an A&D, acquisition and disposition book. Even if the gun was reported stolen by make and serial number, the dealer wouldn't know it. This guy, Richard Feldman, in this article is proposing that every dealer purchase be automatically run through the NCIC system, then local police, and informed about the pending purchase of stolen property could then question the seller, leading to immediate arrests. So basically, every gun that a dealer acquires should automatically be run through a criminal system, the NCIC, and local police records. I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. And then they could know right on the spot if that gun's stolen or not. Now, on the surface, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. But I'll tell you this much, too. Matthew, maybe you could confirm this for me. Let's say you've got these so-called fences, these individuals that are intermediaries in trafficking of stolen goods. Do you suppose that if a system like this was implemented, that maybe those fences would just stop selling those to dealers?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think one of the big problems with this, and I think if somebody will say, well, if it catches one, that's better than nothing. I think these types of things, when you look at it, when people's firearms are stolen, oftentimes they don't even have the serial number. They don't know. And so getting it into the system may be delayed. It might be, by the time you find out that your firearm is stolen, you're on vacation, you come home, you call the police, they come, they do the investigation. It could be a month, 3 months, 6 months before that item is listed in any database that somebody would be able to pull from and see that it's stolen. So, I would imagine that these guns would still be sold. They would just, maybe you would catch a few here and there, but it certainly wouldn't stop illegal gun sales. I don't think that it would make a huge impact either.
No, and this making a big to-do about how this is how illegal guns get out there. Like, this is a weird thing to me because what this tackles apparently, presumably, is that we will discourage gun thefts because we'll remove the mechanism whereby they can turn those stolen guns into cash. Yeah,
But
don't buy that.
They're still going to sell them illegally anyways.
They'll find another way to move those guns and turn it into cash. And secondly, this just puts, apparently, according to this guy, stolen merchandise in the hands of dealers that are then turning around and probably selling it to law-abiding purchasers. So what's the problem with that? Like, these are not illegal guns per se. I mean, stolen, okay, I suppose, right? Like, that's not cool, but like, this does not do, again, what this guy claims it's going to do, that we're going to somehow reduce stolen guns by removing this mechanism whereby they sell those stolen guns to get cash. A lot of thieves out there, break into houses or into vehicles and steal guns, so they then have a gun themselves to then go use in another crime.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, and it's strange to me because there's a couple problems. In order to arrest somebody or convict somebody of having stolen property, even possessing it, you have to show that they knew that it was stolen. And so if somebody says, hey, I just bought this off of a guy, we don't have universal background checks, or I can make a personal sale. I bought this from a guy, I'm selling it to you. You're going to arrest me. I didn't know it was stolen. I have no way to check this to see if it's stolen. So there's a lot of gray area that I believe would end up not really, because then that gun owner or that gun shop is going to have to call the police on the person who came in there and said, hey, I didn't know it was stolen. And so they have to, it just seems to me that I don't see a lot of people stealing guns and selling them to gun stores to make money. They sell them to other criminals because they know, this isn't, I don't think that this is a big thing where criminals are stealing guns and selling them to a store to make money. I don't.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Right.
Just that the what this guy is proposing is stupid and pointless, and tackles very, very little of actual problems that are out there. Number 3, remember, not every gun owner is crazy. He talks about red flag laws, and basically a lot of what David Feldman's proposing is we shouldn't call universal background checks because it's scary to gun owners. And he's doing the same thing here. He's saying gun violence restraining orders, cool. Red flag laws, yeah, let's not use the red flag law, phrasing. Basically, he's for red flag laws, but doesn't want to call them red flag laws because he knows that it has a negative connotation. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like I said, dude's a total FUD. By the way, Brian makes a good point here, commenting on Facebook, says that if you don't know, like, you should have your serial numbers, basically. All right, gun owners, you should have your guns, and you should know what serial numbers are on those guns. You should have a record of that, because if something is stolen, you should be able to report that. All right. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm just telling you, from being a police officer and taking crime reports from people, a lot of people don't have the serial numbers of their firearms. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. You ask somebody,
my 9mm Glock got stolen.
Right. They don't even know the manufacturer of it. They'll say, hey, what kind of gun do you have? I had a 9mm. Okay. 9mm what?
Yep.
Ask somebody their license plate number.
Yep.
Right. Like, unless it's a private or personalized license plate, they don't know it. So,
by the way, in our Concealed Carry Gun Tools app, our free app that we have developed and made available to anybody that has a mobile device, if you want, and it's secured behind a firewall and everything, you can keep track of. We actually have this tool called My Firearms. You go into the menu there, you click My Firearms, and you can actually create a record of all your guns in there, and you can create that record at whatever level of detail that you want. But you can have a photo of the gun, you can have serial numbers recorded, you can have other details recorded about that gun, and you can create a record for everything that you own. Some may be wary of doing something like that, but it's just a tool. It's handy, and it's there if you want to use it. It's a simple way that you can make a quick record of everything that you own, so you have that information. And if something does happen, if it's lost or stolen, you can very easily, accurately report it, not only to law enforcement authorities to help in the relocation of that item, but also to your insurance if you have a claim that you need to file there as well. All right? Cool little tool. Just one of the many features available in the Concealed Carry Gun Tools app. And then finally, Mr. Feldman talks about learn what assault weapon really means. And he makes a whole bunch of non-points here again. So this whole article, blah, 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 blah. I'm moving on. I'm done. I'm done with him. He's a former NRA lobbyist, and the NRA already still has all kinds of problems. It's clear to me why he's a former NRA lobbyist, because he's one of the people that caused a lot of problems with the NRA in the first place, is the way I see it. Okay. Bloomberg heads to Arkansas to file for 2020 presidential primary, reported at the New York Times. So Michael Bloomberg is looks like he's dipping his toe into the presidential race. All signs are pointing that he's going to get involved in the Democratic primaries for the presidential race in 2020. And so, why is this significant? Well, it's Bloomberg, and he freaking hates guns. So Beto got out, and we're replacing Beto with Bloomberg.
Yeah, it's funny because Bloomberg, he was the one while he was mayor in New York, right? He was the one that instituted stop and frisk, right? Which had an impact on their crime rate or homicide rate due to firearms during the time, but then subsequently it was rolled back because it was, infringing on people's, constitutional rights, and it was, it said it was, people would argue that it was disproportionately affecting Black and Hispanic people. So it was rolled back, but that was like his pride and joy, right? Like this gun control, I guess, legislation. It was more, I think it's more crime control, but he spun it into a gun control thing, and now he's running for the Democratic presidency, and I don't see how he gets in there with his track record. I don't know. I mean, yeah, they'll applaud him for not liking guns, but everything else, I think he's kind of troubled in the Democratic Party, but we'll see.
Yep. All righty. Now we get to a story that is near and dear to my heart. Because this is dealing with stuff in Colorado here. Now, this is actually part of our state speed reload stories. This little segment here where we're going to kind of rapid fire go through a bunch of more state level issues, but might spend just a little bit more time on this one because it's personal to me. 9news.com, which is a local NBC affiliate here in the Denver metro area, published this pretty lengthy article, some kind of investigative journalism piece, that folks are probably familiar with. So they spent a lot of time, put a lot of effort into it, and actually, as far as reporting goes, it's pretty well done. But I have some additional thoughts about that. So the piece is called "Overloaded: How Large Capacity Gun Magazines Are Still Being Sold in Colorado." Did you read this by chance, Matthew?
I did. It's a very interesting article.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was your take on this?
Well, just in case the listeners haven't seen the article, basically it's talking about the magazine limit restriction law that went in. How long ago? Is it 6 years?
It was 2013.
Okay.
So, 6 years ago.
Yeah,
now.
so about 6 years. And so this article is an undercover reporter goes into several stores, gun stores in Colorado, across Colorado. And I don't know if it was just Denver area. You can talk to that, but
all over the place. They went into a bunch, all up and down the Front Range, and I mean, like all the way from the northern counties along basically, if you follow I-25, which is the major interstate that goes right through the center of Denver, they went to a bunch of different gun stores and shops and dealers and stuff, pretty much all along that I-25 corridor from the north, from Wyoming all the way down to Pueblo. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So he goes in and goes into these gun stores and is looking to see if he can buy high capacity or magazines of more than 15 rounds. And so while he's in there, it's a big gamut from different stores, but on the low end or on one end of the spectrum in some of these stores, it's like he overhears people, some of the clerks saying, "Hey, we'll sell you a magazine parts kit that you can put together on your own. We can't sell the kit or the magazine completed because it's against the law for somebody to sell, manufacture, or purchase or possess high capacity magazines." Right. So So, and then on the other end of the spectrum, there's people that are like, yeah, we got 100 round drums. We don't care. Sheriff told me it's good to go. And we sell them and we're not concerned about it. So you have all these different like stores kind of going through and saying, yeah, there is the law, the way the law is written is not very good, because it doesn't say, you can't possess a magazine or purchase a magazine or parts kit that would produce, a magazine. Or, I mean, technically, I guess they could probably say you can't purchase a magazine tube that would hold 15 rounds, and it would, kind of, check that box. But basically, what it is, it's a roundabout way of selling high capacity magazines, or magazines that would be otherwise illegal to sell, by saying we're just selling parts to the magazines. And so, it's pretty interesting. And it's a very in-depth article. He tries to get some feedback from the store owners, calls out, and none of the store owners really engage with him as far as giving a statement on why they're doing what they're doing, or why they think it's good or bad. I took from it. I personally, I think that selling a parts kit is fine. You sell a spring and a magazine fowler and a magazine tube. I mean, you're not selling a 15 round magazine. I don't know, there's no case law, I guess, that has been challenged yet. I imagine there would be eventually. But I just think it looks bad for us as gun owners, because it's kind of like these guys are saying, we don't follow the law. We don't care. We found a loophole. We don't care. But not, and they're willing to say that to a customer, but they're not willing to be able to articulate their stance to a reporter and say, yes, this is why we believe what we're doing is correct. We're selling this, this, and this. If the law said something else, we would abide by the law. But the way the law is written, we have no reason to think that otherwise, that we couldn't sell these, parts of magazines. But they don't say that, and that's right. Where it kind of like it's the conversation's only one side. You only hear one side, and so that was kind of my take. It was just kind of upsetting to see that not one of these stores could say, yes, this is why we're doing it, and we think what we're doing is right. It almost implied that they were doing something bad.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now let's be clear. One of the reasons this law was passed was because of the Aurora Theater shooting. Sandy Hook also occurred not too long before that. So politically, culturally, socially, there was all this kind of, and I'm not saying this is true of everybody, but like we saw how things were reported in the media. There was this general frustration, and especially for mainstream media, that, oh man, these horrible things happen, and so we got to do something about it. And this was one of the things, by the way, along with the magazine capacity limit law passed in 2013. And just so it's clear, in Colorado, it does prohibit magazines above or beyond 15 rounds, right? So 15 rounds is okay, 16 rounds not okay, at least according to how the law was written. The other thing that was passed was so-called universal background checks. And so that happened as well. And supposedly both of these things are supposed to prevent another Aurora Theater shooting from happening. Now, I wouldn't say that we've had another mass shooting quite to the extent or level of, say, Aurora Theater, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it couldn't have happened. If anything, we've been probably lucky or whatever, I don't know. Colorado is a bit of a hotbed. If you look at it statistically speaking, per capita, there's more mass shootings here, particularly high profile ones, than other states or population centers that are of a similar makeup, right? I think some of that's Columbine. Columbine was such an icon almost. There's people that worship Columbine and the Columbine shooters, and people that come here to be a part of that weird counterculture, So anyway, law was passed, supposed to fix stuff. Clearly, it's not making any significant difference in crime. In fact, crime, at least as I perceive it, has been unchanged, and if anything, arguably worse since the passage of this law. Not that we're seeing I'm not aware of anything that's where AR-15s or 30-round magazines or something are, that prevalent in crime. They still aren't that prevalent, right? Statistically speaking, just like it is nationwide, semi-automatic rifles and so-called high-capacity magazines. Let's be clear; these are standard capacity magazines that have been outlawed here. But we're not, there. This law was a bogus law in the first place and was meant to fix things that weren't a problem in the first place, or fix things that can't be fixed, at least by passing stupid laws like this. So they didn't do a very good job of wording. I mean, arguably, I don't have a problem with it, obviously, but the fact that they failed to craft the language in their bill in such a way that would prohibit people from selling parts of magazines and so forth that could be used to make a greater than 15 round magazine. Here's what's going to happen, though. Here's why we're talking about it today. This is going to result, I'm fairly certain. I know for a fact this is a bill that is going to be hitting our legislative session here in just a couple of short months, where they're not just going to focus on fixing this so-called loophole. They're going to go a step further, and they're going to go from 15, and they're probably going to go to 10 rounds. I am 99% certain that that's where this is going. And I think the timing of the publishing of this article is extremely suspicious. I personally believe there's a hidden agenda here in why this is being published now. It's not like people didn't know about this 3, 4, 5 years ago. There's certain gun shops here in the Denver metro area that have never stopped selling greater than 15 round magazines. They went from one day we sold assembled 16 round magazines, and the next day we took the spring and follower out of the magazine body and stuck it in a package here, and we put the magazine body in a package here, and we sold them on the shelf next to each other. Yeah, to an anti-gunner, they're like, oh my gosh, wow, they just found this loophole and they're doing this nefarious thing. The reality is it was a stupid law in the first place, and we're like, you know what, this doesn't keep us from being able to sell this part, and you go and assemble it, like, whatever, and it's unenforceable. Like, how do you prove when somebody bought these parts? How do you prove when somebody bought this magazine? You can't really prove it. The burden of proof is on the state. It's on the prosecution. That's the case anyway. But like, how are they going to prove that? I paid cash for it. I drove across the border to Wyoming. I paid cash for a magazine, and I brought it back with me. How are you going to prove that? Right? It's a dumb law. It's unenforceable. We've known that for a long time, and like, so what? Anyway, that's why I think the publishing of this article is a little suspicious, and the timing of it, because the timing of it is perfect to go along with, we want to push public opinion in the direction of encouraging our lawmakers here in Colorado to fix this loophole and pass probably even more restrictive magazine limits.
Yeah, why wouldn't it? You know what I mean? Like, it's the whole slippery slope, or death by 1,000 cuts, or whatever you call it, right? Like, you just continue to move it a little bit further each time somebody cedes some ground. Okay, well, we'll do this, and then they're not pleased, and because that will not accomplish what their goal is, which is keeping you from having a firearm.
Yep. All right, we should actually now move along with our speed reload.
All right.
Florida County first in state to enact Second Amendment sanctuary in support of gun rights. We're seeing more and more counties and even cities, and in some cases states, passing these resolutions and different things saying that we are a Second Amendment sanctuary. You know what? And I think it's awesome. I think it's wonderful. Does it mean a whole lot? No, but hey, cool. And which county was that? I forgot already.
I don't know.
I closed it here. Hold on. I'm pulling it back up.
Lake County, Florida.
Lake County, Florida. A Second Amendment sanctuary. So Lake County sounds like a good place to be anyway.
Yes, sir.
All right. Next up. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Louisiana governor, what's his name?
Edwards.
Governor John Edwards. John Bell Edwards Democrat wants more control on gun shows in the form of expanded background checks. Okay, so basically, and we did that in Colorado here like almost 20 years ago. Post Columbine, a law was passed here in Colorado requiring background checks to be performed on gun sales at gun shows, even private party, right? So like occasionally you might have a person that is at a gun show and they're just trying to sell a personal firearm. Well, they created a mechanism where people can run through background checks at gun shows here in Colorado, even with private party transfers. And by the way, it's illegal for you to meet somebody, say, inside a gun show and be like, hey, cool gun, man. Yeah, you like it? Yeah. Tell you what, meet you outside after the gun show's over and we'll just do the deal in the parking lot. That's illegal. Like, okay. Anyway, so Governor Edwards in Louisiana wants to pass a law that's similar. But AWR Hawkins, who does an amazing job reporting at Breitbart.com on gun-related issues, highlights all these different mass shootings and other violent crimes that have occurred where they were purchased completely 100% legally through a background check process.
27 of them.
Yeah. So again, what are we trying to do with the universal background checks? Like, what problem are we trying to solve?
Yeah.
Because I thought it was all these mass shootings, Matthew. Like, the Las Vegas shooting happened, and there was all this public outcry about, well, we got to have universal background checks. I was like, wait a minute, that dude like totally bought all these guns legally, passing background checks. Oh, there's the Sutherland Springs shooter. Like, we got background checks. Oh, wait, that guy actually passed a background check. Oh, but wait, the information in the background check system was not up to date, and see the problem?
Yeah, and the other problem, and it's stated in this article, the DOJ study showed fewer than 1% of prisoners got their gun via gun show. So less than 1% of prisoners got their gun via gun show. 36% say they stole their gun. This is like interviews with people that been arrested. So I mean, I don't know this when they throw out the gun show loophole, and this kind of ties back into the universal background checks, right? It's what are we focused on? If we're focusing on the less than 1%, and that's your solution, then it's not a solution, right? It's just not a solution.
It's political posturing that makes people feel good, and allows politicians to go, "Hey, look what I did."
Absolutely.
Moving on, because we need to move on. Montana Supreme Court rules unanimously in favor of gun rights. So the city of Missoula, Montana, which is probably like the one city in Montana that's a little bit of a, well, Helena somewhat too, kind of a, we try to avoid terms like liberal and Democrat and things like that in this podcast, but they are not as gun friendly as other parts of Montana. And the Missoula City Council passed an ordinance a couple years ago that criminalized all private firearm transfers in the city by requiring a background check for the sale or transfer of every firearm, including purchases at gun shows. The law provided few exceptions, and so a legal challenge was issued against this law, challenging the city of Missoula, and has worked its way through the courts, and finally now it was appealed, and the Montana Supreme Court ruled unanimously in the favor of the challenger, attorney, which is State Attorney General Tim Fox. So Missoula's law ain't gonna fly in the state of Montana. Goodbye.
Yeah, good thing.
Yep. Next up, Oregon. And this reported on OregonFirearms.org from the Oregon Firearms Federation. Attorney General releases certified ballot title for gun lockdown measure. So basically, there's a ballot initiative, this is something that'll be put to the voters to vote on in 2020. And what this is going to require you to store your guns locked. It has some very specific provisions. It also opens the door for liability so that if somebody gets a hold of your gun and uses it in a crime, then you're personally liable for that. and the use of that gun in that crime. And so we've seen similar things in California and New York and other jurisdictions across the country. I have big issues with these types of laws, but this is coming to the state of Oregon. So if you're an Oregonian, or Oregonian sounds better than Oregonian. Oregonian. I like Oregonian. If you're an Oregonian, you need to be fighting against this ballot measure. Ballot measure 40, it is called.
Yeah. These laws are, like we say all the time, it might not be your state today, but these didn't just originate in Oregon, right? Washington, New York have similar laws on the books currently. So,
Yep.
yep.
On to Virginia. Virginia, so we just had, midterm election. Well, not midterm exactly, not the true midterms of like 2018, but a midterm election of sorts. So 2019, we just had the November elections. And in Virginia, we saw the Virginia, it's not the House they call it. What is it? What's it called? What's it called? No, General Assembly. There we go. The General Assembly and the Senate has swung to the Democratic Party. And you have a very well-known anti-gun governor, Ralph Northam. Okay, so basically you have now what is believed to be a completely controlled government in the state. It's what we call a trifecta, where you have the governor's seat, the House, and the Senate, essentially, or the equivalents of those, all controlled by one party. And that's a problem for pro-gun Virginians, because we already know. I knew this as soon as I saw the election results on Wednesday last week for Virginia. I'm like, oh snap. Gun control is coming to Virginia, and it will come with a vengeance, because Governor Northam has just been relishing at the opportunity. He's already tried to do some things almost by executive, order, and so, yeah, Virginians, I'm very, very sorry, but the folks in Virginia, now I'm not saying our listeners in Virginia, but the folks of Virginia elected what will probably be a very anti-gun government for the next at least year or two. That will be problematic. So, yeah, and even like Virginia is well known for their non-resident permit program, where if you meet certain training standards, and it can be accomplished through, I'm not saying this is ideal, but we do sell an online concealed carry training course that you can take, and it does qualify you to apply for a non-resident permit in Virginia. I think that's actually nice to have. Okay, I'm not saying that that's ideal. I definitely believe in people getting training, but I'm also a big proponent of constitutional carry. But at least there's a mechanism where, I've used the word mechanism a lot today, it's kind of funny, where people in states like New York or Massachusetts or New Jersey or whatever, where it's difficult maybe to get a concealed carry permit, but yet, you might travel to some of these other states where you could then carry concealed, outside of your home state. And so you can get a non-resident permit and maybe have reciprocity in some of these other states that you might travel to and be able to carry concealed, which I think, you should be able to do anyway, but you got to follow the law. So, anyway, I'll bet you that non-resident permit program and reciprocity that Virginia has, I'll bet a lot of that just goes away here. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. Oh, did I lose Matthew? I lost Matthew. He must have gotten bounced. So I will carry it on. Wyoming, got a story here out of Wyoming where Wyoming legislation rule against mental health and firearm bill. Wyoming state lawmakers ruled against a bill which wanted to prevent people with documented mental illnesses from buying firearms. The bill that was opposed by a 9-5 vote would have required the state to report mental illness adjudications to firearm dealers via the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, the NICS database. So the current legislation says to possess a firearm that is manufactured commercially or privately in Wyoming that remains within the borders of Wyoming, a person shall not currently be adjudicated to be legally incompetent and not have been committed to a mental institution. According to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, Wyoming is currently last in the nation in terms of the number of disqualifying mental health records submitted per capita. To date, authorities in Wyoming have provided such records 13 times. But when a bill was brought forth to maybe change some of this, it was defeated. So, you know what? I totally understand the desire to not have crazy people running around with guns. That's fair. But at the same time, I exercise caution in how we might potentially further stigmatize mental illness and create what's the word? Unintended consequences, right? Of things, because basically one thing that sometimes you might have is someone that needs to get mental health help, but because they're afraid that they will lose their gun rights, they might not seek that help. So this is a very difficult situation. Hi, Matthew's back. Hey, sorry I didn't see you there, bud.
Hey, sorry. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, all good, all good. So, but anyway, so just bringing the news to you folks. Whatever you think about it, I don't know, but I just think it's interesting that the folks in Wyoming said, yeah, we're not interested in pursuing this at this time. So Wyomingites are they're very pro 2 gun or pro 2A, so not surprising at all. All right. I think that's it, Matthew. Like you bugged out at the wrong time. I asked a question, didn't notice that you got bumped, and then was like, hey, it's awkwardly quiet. So anyway, which is probably for the best because it forced me basically to wrap up the episode. We need to do our giveaway now. So
Right.
So Matthew, I'm glad you're back in time to be my drum roller.
I only have one hand, man.
Well, figure it out. Figure it out. You're Marine.
Let me see if I can do this. All right. You ready to do it?
Hold on, though. But real quick, we are announcing the winner of a TW350 TacWear flashlight. All right. So very exciting. All right. So do your best and give us your drum roll. That wasn't bad at all.
It's all right. For a one-handed guy.
Yeah, not bad at all. Aaron S. Last name starts with the letter S. Aaron S. That is AARON S. Congratulations, Aaron, on being the winner of the TW350 Tactical Flashlight. Again, we remind everybody to sign up for the weekly giveaway at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. And this next week is we're giving away a free month to the Laser X software. So
good deal.
Yeah. And again, today's episode was made possible, brought to you by laserapp.com. Give them some love, and I'd encourage you to check out laserapp.com. Really, really awesome stuff. Great training program, for me, I've always been a proponent of dry fire. I've done it pretty religiously for a number of years now, but Laser App sort of it added a whole other dimension to my dry fire training. It's not like it's the thing that I use all the time. It's not my thing that I use solely for dry fire. It's a tool that I use at various times that is very beneficial, that I enjoy using, and actually helps just kind of mix things up with my dry fire, allows me to do some things that I can't do with normal dry fire. And so I love it. I love Laser App. Laserapp.com. Today's episode also sponsored by Guardian Nation. No surprise there, but GuardianNation.com. We hope that you'll check it out and become a part of the nation. So with that, it's time to wrap it up and let folks go, Matthew.
All righty.
So we will do just that. Thanks, everybody, for being a part of this episode, for listening. If you have any questions or want to submit anything as far as topics or questions, feel free to email us anytime, podcast@concealedcarry.com. We'll do our best to get back to you or talk about your topic or question on an upcoming episode. So with that, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care. All righty. Well, thanks for being here, everyone. Good conversation going on here. And it's harder for me, I've noticed, to watch comments as I am also looking at and going through news stories. But I appreciate you all. Thank you so much, everybody.
Definitely.
So, time to get back to other work stuff. Matthew's got to get back to healing that shoulder. And so, till next time, take care out there. We'll see you.